everybody. Okay, I wanted to elaborate on a point I made in the last video. That was way too goddamn long, an hour and 40 minutes, oh god. So, in it, I went over this Lee Atwater quote. I'm going to explain it and try and contextualize something, or like give you an example of how certain things work.
Political science. Or, no.
So I'm going to start just playing the quote real quick.
As a psychologist, which I'm not, is how abstract you handle the race thing. In other words, you start out, and now y'all aren't quoting me. You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts your backfire. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now. You're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things. And the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger, you know. So any way you look at it, race is coming on the back burner.
So I want to contextualize this and how this works in like tax cuts and like general libertarian nonsense, okay? So his point is we can affect racially discriminatory policies without directly implicating race in the textual proposal. So I want to talk about how that works in practice and how it just kind of fucks over poor and working class people overall. So in the first year or two of the Trump administration, they passed a major tax bill that had a $1.5 trillion tax cut. What kind of inspired me to talk about this was Jon Stewart on Joe Rogan, a video. I think it was like on my homepage. Whatever. Yeah, Jon Stewart was talking to Joe Rogan, and he mentioned something like this, and I kind of like juxtaposed with the video that I just made. I wanted to talk about it. So the tax cut that the Trump administration and the Republican-controlled Congress passed in I think it was 2017 or 2018, had the effect of giving a disproportionate amount of those tax cuts to wealthy people, and created it so our deficit is increasing in the United States by over $1 trillion a year. So the quick explanation of the difference between debt and deficit. Debt is the total amount of money our country owes, i.e. we borrowing money from other countries, or borrowing from the Fed, or however that works. I'm not super good at economics, but deficit is just the yearly negative amount that we add to our debt. So yearly, you would have a $1 trillion deficit. As an example, you would be adding $1 trillion to your debt every year. So you could have a $20 trillion debt and having a $1 trillion deficit, and the next year, you'd have a $21 trillion debt. So the Trump tax cuts, all this trickle-down nonsense is usually pitched as, well, we're going to get, as the government, a bigger or a smaller portion of a bigger pie. So let's say your tax revenue is like $4 trillion a year or whatever. But you cut taxes, and they're saying the growth from the economy, if now like we have lower percentages, we're going to end up with $4.2 trillion in revenue because the economic growth is going to offset those losses. This is stupid from multiple avenues. One, an increase in economic growth is usually precipitated off like an increase in people, an increase in infrastructure, all this other stuff that would require more tax spending like overall, right? So if there's more people who are like working, maybe you need to put more money, or more people are working or retiring or like whatever, maybe you need to put more money into Medicaid and Medicare or something like that, or maybe you need to expand roads or whatever. So it's kind of stupid on that end, but it's also just wrong because we never actually end up getting that bigger share of, that smaller share of a bigger pie, resulting in it being revenue neutral. That's a term you'll always hear. They were talking about it being revenue neutral. Paul Ryan, let's try it. Revenue neutral. Let's see. There's a really fancy way of saying that it won't. Oh, he said he won't even commit to a revenue neutral. That's cool, man. But it's a term that you hear thrown around about how like getting the smaller piece of a bigger pie results in it being revenue neutral, and that's pitched because their tax cuts are going to stimulate enormous growth, and their estimates are always wrong, and it literally never works out. You have Reagan tax cuts. You had Bush tax cuts, and then you now have the Trump tax cuts, and there's also the Kansas City project, which is really fucking funny, and I'll probably talk about like briefly real quick. So here's a great tweet that Paul Ryan got made fun of for. A secretary at a public high school in Lancaster, Pennsylvania said she was pleasantly surprised her pay went up $1.50 a week. So that more than cover her Costco membership for the year. So one of the things I heard people defending is like, who cares if the rich people got more from the tax break? You also got something. Who cares? We all benefited. Which just isn't really true, because in the short term, like, it almost seems correct, but like what it doesn't anticipate is how those revenue cuts are done on the backside, right? So Republicans also typically complain about our debt, complain about our deficit, how we have to worry about spending, particularly when Democrats are in power. Oh, we can't do this, we can't afford that. But that always comes off the back of them giving tax cuts to the rich people, which they didn't need to do, which drive our debt and our deficit, which, once again, they didn't need to do. So this $1.50 a week that goes to this lady's Costco membership, right? Cool, she's got $1.50 more a week. Who fucking cares? That's what, $75, $78 more a year or something like that. Really not a big fucking deal. Now, let's contextualize this even more. What will that $1.50 go towards? Paul Ryan's like, she's just gonna spend on her Costco membership. But now that the country is taking in less money, a major part of our road funding, our road infrastructure across the country is federal subsidies to local building projects, or federal management of like our highway systems, to make sure our roads are not impacted. So like, for example, I'm going to anecdote this a little bit here to try and demonstrate the point. I was driving to school once in Midtown Manhattan, right? Cross over the George Washington Bridge, driving down the West Side Highway, hit a fucking massive pothole, blow out my goddamn tire. So I pull over in Harlem, change my fucking tire, go on my way. When I go to replace that tire, it cost me, I got a cheap tire, I think it was like 60 or 80 bucks installed. That is this entire $1.50 fucking gone. And you can apply this to all sorts of different things, and that's just one example of one tire I blew out one fucking time. There are government funds that we use to subsidize all sorts of things that benefit the average worker and the lower and middle classes, right? For example, that road funding, right? If that road was adequately paved, right? Like, I've been to areas where the roads are just completely blown out and just undrivable, where you're just hitting pothole after pothole. Now it means my tires are failing quickly, and I'm gonna have to spend more on tires, right? You can apply that to like many, many things in life, right? If we stop doing certain like low-income food subsidies, then you're gonna have people who are eating less healthy. That turns into earlier onset diabetes, or emaciates a diabetic condition that then costs us insulin. Like, there's so many ways this can ball into other things, but these effects take place downstream, right? So you could say, oh, the tax break gave you $1.50, and then when the problem arises, you don't realize like how that expenditure, that tax cut that benefited the rich people and cost us our ability to pay for better infrastructure or better like subsidies or better welfare states, how that could have alleviated problems you experienced downstream. It's there's a term for this and I can't remember what it was, but it's people's inability to appreciate the event that didn't happen, or in this case, the inability to attribute an event that did happen to an earlier like antecedent thing, right? So that tax cut that gave rich people trillions of dollars more than like the working class and poor people, is going to result in it costing poor people, who typically drive more cars than rich people, right? Who are going to be spending more on tires, just as one example, because their tires are experiencing more wear and more just random blowouts from road hazards, because now we don't have the money to fix fucking roads, okay? So that is the downstream effects of that, because the Republicans will then say, oh, we're going to give money back to everybody, the economy is going to be good, it's going to be revenue neutral, or we're going to get more money. They're always wrong there. And then when the deficit comes back and it increases, when you try and do something like, hey, let's help out like blah, 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 they go, we can't afford to do that, we can't have nice things, or we need to curtail, let's say, what's the term they always use, the politically correct one, welfare spending and entitlement programs. Oh, entitlement. The reason it's entitlement is because you pay into the system to get to get stuff out of it. We all pay into it. Rich people should pay in more. They talk about, oh, we need to tackle our deficit by curtailing entitlement spending, which means that the working class, retirement age people, poor people get fucked. Also, the rich people can get the lion's share of the benefits from like a tax overall. It's silly, and it's short-sighted. It's a thing a lot of people have trouble conceptualizing, the long-term ramifications of something like this tax cut. And it's very easy, like rhetorically, to play defense of like, why are you just being jealous of rich people getting more money than you? You like they made more money. That's why they got more money. Not just that, and you should just be happy that you're also getting more money. We're all benefiting here. But they don't realize that the burden of the downside of these tax benefits fall disproportionately on the working class. Because like, if you're sufficiently rich, when you retire, hey, you can afford your own healthcare shit. Who cares if Medicare, Medicaid sucks? I'm worth $1 million, 10 million. Well, millions, I guess, not really that much if you're like retirement age. Like if you retire at 65 and you need to live like 30 years on $1 million, probably not going to do super great for you, but you might be able to swing it. But if you're worth like 5, 10, 15, 20 million dollars plus from that, like, unless something crazy happens, you know, like you could probably afford to like pay for that premium healthcare service. But when Medicare and Medicaid get gutted and they have to add in like, I don't want to speak like completely out of turn here, but I know like Bush as part of like, I think it was part of like some reform, added in the whole like you need to pay for your own drugs and pay for the supplemental shit for Medicare that like hurts people, you know, like you have to pay more. So like the rich people aren't experiencing, or well-off people aren't generally experiencing the majority of the downside from that. Like, oh, you make like $100K a year, an extra tire that you blew out on your way to work, like, it kind of sucks. No big deal, you know? And maybe you'll even get a portion of those tax breaks if you made, you know, enough money. But for the average person, the downswing from the down road costs of like the short-term tax cuts, they're gonna fuck you more than they're gonna fuck rich people, while rich people are the ones who benefited from the tax cuts disproportionately at the beginning. So that is why it's messed up. Because like I think our tax code should make rich people pay more and poor people pay less. But like just because poor people are now paying less in some instances, it's not in all instances, doesn't mean like that rich people should also pay less. No, they should just pay more to subsidize the consumption of, like, I think consumption has problems in and of itself, but the way our economy is based around consumption, you can just give more money to poor people, and they, whether through less taxes or direct monetary, directly giving them money, direct stimulus aid, and that will stimulate your economy. It's pretty straightforward, but I just kind of wanted to like go over how, like the common refrains of like how these tax cuts are pitched, like, oh, everyone benefits, so why are you complaining? It's like, well, no, because while technically everyone receives some form of benefit, right? Like this person receiving $1.50 more is more than them receiving nothing, but this person who's in Lancaster, let's see how many people in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I think that's like outside of like Philly or something. I'm not 100%. Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like a decent sized city. Let's see, probably like what, 150K or something. Okay. All right, so their metro area has 500,000 people. The city itself has 60,000. There's probably an awful lot of driving here. So if as a result of like not paying that tax thing, you're blowing out like an additional tire every year, and food subsidies are costing, like your groceries are going to cost a little bit more because we can't afford to like make local farms like cheaper or something like that, or whatever those downstream effects are. It'd be impossible for me to quantify literally every conceivable bad thing. But like that money that you're receiving is going to like shell out into different categories that it's hard for you to attribute to, like, oh, I wouldn't have had to pay this had we tacked rich people equity and better funded these programs. So that's how you would probably try and respond to like one of those comments from someone who's trying to pitch that it benefited anybody, and how like utterly simplistic and stupid it is. But like, I mean, that's libertarianism for you. It's a religion masquerading as like a pragmatic like philosophy guided by like evidence, but I'll get into that another time too. All right, cool. Unless we kept this one like under an hour and 40 minutes. Godspeed.